This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone, and it's great to see people here. Okay, for roll call, everyone is present, and we'll now take a moment for reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda.
This is moved by Councillor Barber, seconded by Councillor Chapman, that Council adopts the agenda for the special council meeting of November 2nd, 2022.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? See any? Adoption of council and committee minutes. Minutes to approve.
This is moved by Deputy Mayor Andrews and seconded by Councillor Barber, that Council approves the following minutes. Special meeting of Council held on October 5th, 2022.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move into delegations and public meetings. Council will recess and commence the Committee of Adjustment hearing. Resolution, please.
This is moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor Oslich, that Council do now recess and commence a Committee of Adjustment meeting at 7:01 p.m. with respect to the following items. Item 6.1.1, and that's Manager of Planning and Development Report Plan 1422, respecting a planning evaluation report for application for minor variance, and that's file number A622, respecting 2 Cedar Street, and that's Williamson as the applicant. And item 6.1.2, Manager of Planning and Development Report Plan 1522, respecting planning evaluation report, application for minor variance, file A722, respecting 45 Progress Drive, with the applicant being Home Hardware.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. The Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Aylmer is convened to consider Application 6-22 and Application 7-22. Additional information relating to the applications is available for inspection between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. weekdays at Aylmer Town Hall. Signed written submissions shall be accepted by the Secretary-Treasurer prior to or during the hearing, and such submissions shall be available for inspection by any interested party. In addition, if a party who is notified does not attend the hearing, the committee can proceed, and the party is not entitled to any further notice of hearings. Submission or requests for notice can be sent to clerks@town.aylmer.on.ca. A copy of the decision will be mailed to those persons who attend or are represented at the hearing, and those who have filed a written request with the Secretary for notice of the committee's decision. The committee will receive input in the following order: presentation of the staff report by the Manager of Planning and Development, agent or applicant, the public, staff, and the clerk. Application 6-22 is made by Gunther Homes on behalf of the owner of the property known municipally as 2 Cedar Street in the town of Aylmer. The applicant is requesting to construct a new single dwelling on the lands in the same location to replace the former single detached dwelling. The applicant is seeking relief from the following R2 zone provisions to construct the dwelling in the same location. A, reduced front yard depth minimum from 7.0 meters to 4.11 meters. B, reduced exterior side yard width minimum from 7.0 meters to 1.2 meters. And C, reduced rear yard depth minimum from 7.5 meters to 4.98 meters. Could the Manager of Planning and Development please provide their report on the application? Good evening, Heather.
Good evening, Mayor French. Thank you. As already mentioned, the purpose of this minor variance is to reduce the front yard depth reduce the exterior side yard width and reduce the rear yard depth. The reasons why this is required is there's a few. First of all, as already mentioned in my report, the home that's currently on that property was destroyed due to fire. It unfortunately was not salvageable, is my understanding, which requires the property owner to rebuild the home. It's also my understanding that the foundation that's on the home was also not salvageable as well to be able to reconstruct on. So the homeowner is required to build a brand new dwelling on this property. The second thing that's important to note is this lot. This lot is a smaller lot, so already there's some constraints on the property. The third thing is that the property owner is wanting to rebuild the new home in the same location as the old home. And the old home already was deficient in meeting the front yard setback, the exterior side yard setback, and the rear yard setback. And the reasons for why the homeowner is trying to put it back in the same location is to be able to utilize the existing driveway, which comes off of Chestnut Street, as well as the existing services into the property. And as I mentioned, the lot is small. It is a smaller lot and doesn't meet the minimum requirements of this zone. In terms of the planning, one other thing I should note, however, there was concern with our operations department regarding the site triangle. That was verified that site triangle was being met on this property, and we had that confirmation from the professional engineer working on this file. In terms of the planning policy review, I reviewed the policies. Actually, sorry, I'm going to back up. I'll just take another crack at that. My apologies. The application was circulated internally and to applicable commenting agencies, and no comments of concern were received from staff internally, especially once we had confirmation on the site triangle. No comments of concern were received from applicable commenting agencies. As well, the application was circulated to the neighboring property owners within 60 meters of the property, and no comments were received. Section 45 of the Planning Act allows a municipality to grant a minor variance to a zoning bylaw based on the 4 tests. The first test is, does the variances maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? And yes, it does. The property is designated low-density residential, which allows for single detached dwellings, which is what is being proposed. The proposed minor variance to reduce the front yard depth, the exterior side yard width, and the rear yard depth do not contravene the official plan policies. The second test, does the variances maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And yes, it does. The intention of providing a minimum front yard depth and a minimum exterior side yard width requirements is to promote a consistent building line and to provide for adequate separation from the street and support of public safety. The intent of providing a minimum rear yard depth is to ensure that adequate area is provided for the building envelope, in addition to providing areas for open space, outdoor amenity area, and drainage and grading on the property. As I mentioned, this is a replacement of a home, putting it in the same location. Therefore, it's my opinion that the proposed reduction to the front yard depth, the exterior side yard width, and the rear yard depth, they meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. The third tests are, the variances requested desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings, and yes, it is. The variance will enable the owner to replace the former dwelling on the lands that was destroyed due to fire. Due to the size of the lot, the proposed dwelling is unable to meet the setbacks that and is requesting relief from the front yard depth, exterior side yard width, and the rear yard depth. The variances would not compromise the existing development pattern or the neighborhood character, as the former dwelling already had the same deficiencies on this property. Planning Department is satisfied that the variances would facilitate an appropriate use of the land. And the fourth and final test, are the variances considered minor in nature? And yes, it is. It's important to think of minor not based on a specific number of where a difference of a number of feet determines where the development is acceptable or not. So it's important not to think of numbers. What's more important, it's more appropriate to base the test on the degree of potential impact on neighboring property owners, the environment, and the municipal, county, or provincial functions. Basically, could be an impact on different levels of government. And it's my opinion the impact from the proposed variances is very small with respect to the environment, municipal functions, and the surrounding property owners. Recommendation is that the application for minor variance AO6-22 requesting relief from the specific provisions of 9.3 zone requirements for the residential type 2 zone be approved. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Is the applicant or agent present? And if so, do you wish to speak to the application? Could the clerk confirm whether or not any members of the public wish to speak to the application?
Through you, Madam Chair, there were no members of the public that wished to speak to the application.
Thank you, Josh. And have you received any additional communications related to this application?
Through you, Madam Chair, the only other additional communication that was received was received from Southwestern Public Health, noting no objection to the content of the application.
Thank you, Josh. So I'll turn it over to the committee. Do you have any discussion, any questions, comments? Go ahead, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. One comment and one question. If you look at the property as it sits, and if you look at the numbers, it appears that it's anything but a minor variation until the explanation begins to sink in that the new proposed building will sit basically on the same footprint that the existing one does. It doesn't look like that on paper. However, we've been assured that it is appropriate. My question to Heather is lot coverage percentage a factor in this particular development?
No, it is not. It is under the maximum lot coverage for this zone.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Josh, could you read the resolution, please?
This is moved by Member Charlton and seconded by Member Barber. That Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Aylmer receives Report Plan 1422, Planning Evaluation Report, Application for Minor Variance A0622 respecting 2 Cedar Street, and that the Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Aylmer grants the application for minor variance A0622 respecting 2 Cedar Street, subject to the condition that the proposed development is substantially in accordance with application for minor variance A0622 drawing included in the Report Plan 1422.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I will now move into the next application. Application 6-22 is made by Aaron and Cole Kelly on behalf of the Home Hardware Properties Limited, owner of the property, known municipally as 45 Progress Drive in the town of Aylmer. The applicant is requesting to construct a covered lean-to addition for an existing retail hardware store for covered outdoor storage of retail goods. The owners are seeking relief from the Business Park Commercial C5 zone to permit a reduced minimum front yard depth from 9.0 meters to 4.02 meters to permit the addition of a covered lean-to. Could the Manager of Planning and Development please provide the report on this application?
Okay, thank you, Mayor French. As already mentioned, this proposed minor variance is to permit the construction of a covered lean-to addition for the existing home hardware store here in the town of Aylmer, located at 45 Progress Drive. The owners are seeking relief from the Business Park Commercial C5 zone to reduce the minimum front yard depth from 9 meters to 4.02 meters in order to allow for this covered lean-to to be constructed. It's important to note that currently this area that would be subject to the lean-to currently already has like a concrete pad with black fencing around it, and it's currently storing outdoor retail goods in that area. The minimum front yard depth is not able to be met due to the orientation of the existing building on the lands. Within my report, I've included drawings. Okay, the application was circulated internally and to applicable commenting agencies. No comments of concern were received internally among staff. No comments of concern were received from applicable commenting agencies. Application was also circulated to the neighboring property owners within 60 meters of the lands. No comments from neighboring property owners were received at the time of submission of the report. on to analysis. Section 45 of the Planning Act allows a municipality to grant a minor variance to a zoning bylaw based on the 4 tests as follows. The first test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the official plan? And yes, it does. The property is designated industrial land use, which permits retail and service commercial uses. The proposed minor variance to reduce the front yard depth does not contravene the intention of the official plan. Second test, does the variance maintain the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? And yes, it does. The intention of providing the minimum front yard depth is to promote, as you already heard in the previous variance, a consistent building line and to provide for adequate separation from the street and support of public safety. The proposed covered lean-to for the existing building, as I already mentioned, is within a fenced area adjacent to the building that already stores retail goods. The building line will remain consistent and adequate separation from the street will continue to be provided as part of this variance. Apart from the reduced front yard depth, the application complies with all the remaining zoning provisions. The third test, is the variance requested desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings? And yes, it is. Due to the orientation of the existing building on the lands, the minimum front yard depth is unfortunately unable to be met. The variance will not impede the function of the lot, as the front yard will still be accessible from the street. And the fourth and final test, is the variance minor in nature? And yes, it is. As I've mentioned, it's important not to look at a number. It's more important to base this test on the degree of potential impact to neighboring property owners, the environment, and any municipal, county, or provincial functions that could be impacted. And it's my opinion that the impact from the proposed variance is minimal with respect to the neighboring property owners, the environment, and municipal functions. It is my recommendation that the application for minor variance 07-22 requesting relief from the front yard depth of section 18.3 zone requirements for the business park commercial C5 zone be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Is the applicant or agent present? If so, do you wish to speak to the application? Could the clerk confirm whether or not any members of the public wish to speak to the application?
Through you, Madam Chair, no members of the public wish to speak to the application.
And have you received any additional communications related to this application?
Through you, Madam Clerk, I have not.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into committee discussion. Are there any questions or concerns from the committee? Okay, seeing none, could you read the resolution, please, Josh?
This is moved by Member Barber, seconded by Member Chapman, that Committee of Adjustment for the Town of Elmer receives report Plan 1522, Planning Evaluation Report, Application for Minor Variance A0722 respecting 45 Progress Drive, and that the Committee of Adjustment of the Town of Elmer grants the application for minor variance A0722 respecting 45 Progress Drive by obtaining relief from Section 18.3C of the Town of Elmer zoning bylaw 5799 that requires the front yard depth minimum of 9 meters, proposing a front yard depth minimum of 4.02 meters to permit the construction of a covered lean-to addition to an existing commercial building.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none. Oh, do you have a question, Councillor Chapman?
Your worship, I actually have a comment.
Okay.
I'm just happy to see that Home Hardware is doing well and that you're progressing nicely. So thank you for being part of our community.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Josh, could you read the next resolution, please?
This is moved by Member Chapman, seconded by Member Oslich, that the Committee of Adjustment meeting does now close and council reconvene at 7:19 p.m.
Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is reading of bylaws and proceedings thereon, 3 reading.
This is moved by Deputy Mayor Andrews and seconded by Councillor Barber, that council gives 3 readings to the following bylaw. Bylaw 3722 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at the special council meeting held on November 2nd, 2022.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening. Okay, the next item up is meeting closed to the public.
This is moved by Counselor Chapman, seconded by Counselor Oslich, that council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 7:20 PM to discuss the following matter. Chief Administrative Officer Report CAO 5722 respecting volunteer firefighter staff honorarium. And these proceedings will be closed to the public pursuant to section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act as amended as the subject matter pertains to labor relations or employee negotiations.
Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried, thank you. We'll take a couple of minutes and then we'll move into closed meeting.